Hey everyone, it's Nick Valenti with NJ Valenti Art, and in today's video I want to show you how to use the Gradient Fill tool in Affinity Designer. Alright, so getting started here, we have several different shapes I'm going to be working with to show you how to use the Gradient Fill tool. Starting with this rectangle here, you can see we have it, this light blue fill color here set. If we come over here to the Gradient Fill tool icon, you can either hit the G to pull that up or click on it there. You can see the gradient right next to the arrow itself. So if we click and drag, we can click and drag from left to right, and you can see how it kind of gives us a gradient from the light blue that we had to a darker blue. You can kind of control even the middle handle here to push the light or dark to one side or the other. We can manipulate the gradient even further by coming up to the top menu bar here. The context, right now we have it set on fill because we want the gradient to affect the fill color that we have selected. You can also set that to stroke and add a gradient to your stroke lines. So we'll keep it on fill for now. There are several different types of gradients that you can use as well. For example, right now we're on linear, so that'll just be a straight line gradient. We also have elliptical, and you can manipulate that by moving these handles to get different effects. And we can also again change the lightness and darkness and how close it is to our main source or how far away it is. We also have Radial. This is great for circles. It's also really good for certain highlight and burst effects. Conical, which I haven't quite used. It offers an interesting effect here. So that's something in here you can mess around with if you'd like. Again, manipulating the light and dark using these middle handles here. And the last one being bitmap, which we won't worry about today. So going back to linear, I want to talk a little bit more about how we can manipulate the gradient even further. So with our linear gradient here, coming back up here to the top here, this is where the gradient tool really becomes fun. If we click on our little color menu here, we'll see our gradient, and again it comes back down. It'll have the type, linear, elliptical, radial, so we're going to keep it on linear. We can add additional gradient points to this line. So say for instance, if I wanted to keep this blue but set it more in the middle, and then maybe have on the left side have it a lighter blue, almost closer to white. If I click on this line right here, right next to our light blue, it'll create another gradient point of that same blue, and I can slide that over here towards the center. I will select our furthest gradient point, and I'll come down here to the color. Click on that, and then it brings up our color wheel, which we can then select various colors. We can go darker with it. We could totally change the color if we wanted. But here I wanted to kind of make it a little bit lighter, so I'm going to move this a little bit closer to the white. I don't want it to be fully white. So you can see how we can change each color. If we selected the middle one, we can adjust that color as well. Let's do something similar with our darkest color here on the far right. So I'm going to duplicate that color and drag it a little bit closer to the middle. And then I'm going to select the darkest color on the furthest right. I'll come back down to our color menu here. I'm actually going to add a little bit of purple in here, make it a little bit darker. Alright. So now we've kind of got a 4-point gradient set up. We've got a very light blue, our medium blue, to a darker medium blue, finally ending in that deeper, darker purple color. And then coming back here, we can manipulate that if we want it to be more coming from the top left corner, or if we want to just keep it straight on here. Another fun thing that we could do with the gradient is if we wanted to, we can even come back over here to the either side, but take the lightest one, for example, here on our far left. We have an opacity setting, and it's set right now at 100. So if we went and took that all the way down to 0, and we take a look at our gradient now it goes from a 0% opacity, fills in, and it kind of will fade that color off to pure white, or whatever color you may be working with underneath it, which I think is a pretty cool effect. One way that we can go ahead, if we create a gradient that we like and we want to go ahead and use this on other shapes that we have in our illustration, if we come up here to our swatches menu, there's a drop down menu here. This one right here says gradients. But if we select that, it has grays, colors, and it also has a bunch of other options down here as well, all different Pantone colors. And basically what this does for us is this allows us, it'll give us different color palettes. So this is all Pantone CMYK coded colors. But if we come back up here and select gradients, and then if you notice these 3 squares with squares inside of them and a plus sign, add current fill to palette. By clicking on that, it will add my current fill selection to our palette here. So all I have to do is now, my selection tool, come down and select a different shape of ours here, so the square. And if I want that same gradient on this square, I simply will click our swatches menu here. And it'll leave the gradient in the same way as the rectangle, again moving from the left to right in a straight line. But we can come in here and manipulate that if we want to. Kind of give ourselves something that looks a little bit more like this. With this 0 opacity starting at the top, as if the light source was coming from the top of our image and hitting this square. You can see how it changes from that pure white to a nice lighter blue, finally the dark purple at the bottom. And that's our way that we can go ahead and save whatever gradient we're working with to use it in other areas of our illustration later. Continuing on with our examples here, let's see how we would go ahead and use a gradient on a few of these other shapes. So the circle, for instance, here, we'll use a radial gradient on. And I'm going to kind of switch the colors up probably just a little bit here just to try something a little different. So we'll go ahead and come back up here to our gradient type. We'll select radial. And I want the lightest portion of this to be in the middle of our circle here. Come up here to our colors. I'll probably just switch this around here. Let's go from a light blue maybe to dark purple on the outside. So that's got kind of a cool effect there, but you see how the radial tool, starting with the lightest gradient in the middle, moving out. We can change that too by moving these handles. How much of that dark purple do we want in the actual circle itself? But this also helps if you wanted to look at it as from a lighting perspective. Moving this gradient up here towards, say, the light source coming from the upper right, how it'll hit the circle and then slowly gradiate down to the darker side. So this is a really great way of using gradients to indicate your light source, especially on shapes like this. So not only can we just have it, you know, standard in the middle where the light is going out towards the dark, but we can also manipulate this again even further and have it act more like a true light source on the object. So you see that gives it a lot of volume right off the bat. We haven't even come in here and added any shadow lines or highlights or anything like that. We could always come in here and bump it up a little bit if we wanted to add some specular highlights. Maybe make this very light, almost white blue. To give it kind of a specular highlight if this was going to be a harder, shinier surface. Something else that we can do is we can come here and select this shape and we can add a gradient to it as well. Okay, and for this we'll do the same thing. We'll do a radial gradient. Now the center, I want that to be fairly light, but I don't want it really to gradiate out into another blue. See how it kind of gives it that weird kind of look right there? So what we could do is come back up here to our color options in the gradient. We'll select the darker color, and I'm going to change that darker color opacity down to 0, leaving just that light blue color that we want for our highlight. Now you can see as we take a step back how it's more of just a shiny, bright spot that bleeds out into the rest of the image, similar to the initial gradient that we used. And we can always take and bump this up in size a bit to make it kind of match a little bit more of what we're going for. So that is a super quick and easy way of adding some nice realistic lighting effects to some basic shapes just using the gradient fill tool. Oh, coming back over here, so this freeform shape here I made with the pen tool, and this would represent a more organic shape in one of our illustrations, whether it be any sort of facial features or a shoulder or anything like that. I'm going to, again, grab the gradient tool, just dragging from, oh, I need to have the actual object selected, grab the gradient tool and throw it in there like that. Either way for now, we can come back and manipulate these handles a little bit more. For this one, I want to try the elliptical type. I have found in some of my illustrations recently using the elliptical kind of gives it a more organic feel from light to dark in certain areas. So I want to go ahead and bump up our dark outer colors here. I'm going to make those just a little bit darker. I want something dark there. We'll go over to try to find some more maybe flesh tone colors, kind of giving you an example here. Okay, so once we've kind of got our colors in here, we're on the elliptical type. We can move this around in various ways as well, depending on where we want that highlight to be. So if we have the highlight coming from the upper left-hand corner, this time you can see how we can have it highlighted here, and then it moves down into the darker colors as it gets further away. Something else that we could do is if we want to pull this handle out a little bit further, if I want to break this up a little bit more, I can grab a light, add an extra light gradient node there, and I can add an extra dark gradient node down here and kind of switcheroo them a little bit here. So I'm going to take the lighter one, move it down here. So now what this does for me, looking at this shape, if this shape was higher here, so it's closer to the light source, it's going to be receiving this lighter color of light before transitioning into a darker tone and coming back to a section that may be turning back towards the light a little bit more, represented by this light gradient node here. So you can see how you could get this multi-layered colored effect by using the elliptical. You can also do that as well with our linear tool. Now with the linear tool for a more organic shape like this in this straight line, you can see how the gradient colors are very straight, which is one of the reasons why on organic shapes like this I mentioned I like to use the elliptical tool, well, the elliptical type in the gradient a little bit better, because it does give you that extra curvature and makes it feel a little bit more organic and fit that shape a little nicer. Alright, so let's hop over to an illustration and we'll put some of these techniques into practice. So I've got a pretty basic butterfly here. I just threw this together pretty quick just as an example for gradients, and I've already come in here and I've set our fills. I've got different shapes for each of the wing sections, and then each of the light blue sections are separate as well, and then our lightest blue, almost white color here at the top, and then we also have the body of the butterfly set up as well. So one of the things that we can come in here and do is if we click on the layer itself, you'll see it selects all 4 of the wing shapes at the same time, and using the gradient tool we can manipulate all of them at the same time. So you can see how this gradient is affecting all 4 wing shapes at the same time. So that would offer us a cool option there, having it lighter at the top of the wings and darker towards the bottom. But I think what we'll go ahead here and do instead is I will come in and we will work with each wing individually. So we'll start with this top wing here. We'll kind of drag our gradient. I want the light source to be from the top to the bottom, and I want it to get darker as it gets closer to the butterfly's body. So this is our basic gradient here. I'll come back up to the, I'm going to keep it on linear for now. I'll come to our color options here. I'm going to take this dark blue and go over to the color menu here. I'm going to make this, bring this a little bit closer to purple. Just darken it up just a little bit. And then this light blue, I'm actually going to create another gradient node here and pull it towards the middle, and come to our node on the furthest left here. I want to make this just a slightly lighter blue as well. Just get a little more light in there, maybe make it, there we go. And just play with the gradients a little bit. So I really like the look of this, so what I'll do is I'll come back up here to the swatches menu, and I will go ahead and add this current fill to my palette. So when I go ahead and select our next wing here, I can simply come up to our swatches and click on the same gradient here, okay? And you can see it lays it in there in a very similar way. I can come here and just manipulate this a little bit to get to match the other side a little bit better. I'll come in here and also do the bottom wings. Again, making the adjustments here, playing around with that a little bit. I want this dark purple to kind of be towards the middle portion of the wing. So this gives us a pretty nice base gradient effect for the wings. Now, coming in here, I can go ahead and then take these light blue shades, and I want each side, I'm going to start with the top here, I want all of these to be affected by the gradient at the same time, so I'm going to select one shape, hold shift, and select the other shapes as well, and I'll grab my gradient tool. And I'm actually going to switch this around a little bit. I want the lighter portion towards the center and the darker towards the outside of the wing. I want to see how this might look. And we'll come up here and we'll play with these colors a little bit too. Bring that a little bit closer to purple there. And then our light blue, again, something maybe a little more teal. And try to push that maybe even a little bit further. There we go. So you see how layering the gradients can get you some nice effects. You can also always come in here and mess around with the gradient. Say we want to see what the dark might look like towards the center and keeping the light towards the outside of the wings. We can try that as well. That looks pretty good too. But I think we'll go ahead and keep it the other way just for some more visual interest, just to break it up a little bit more. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select these lightest areas. Grab my gradient tool. Take this blue here. I want all this to be a little bit lighter, and I want this lightest part to be a little bit closer to white. So you can see how you can layer your gradients on top of each other to create some depth and interesting colors. So something that we can do is we can then just take these shapes. If we hold Alt and then Shift, we can drag a copy of the shapes. We'll then flip it up here at the top, flip horizontal. Continuing to hold Shift, we can just line those shapes back up. And you can see what that looks like now on both of the top wings. And we'd be able to go on and continue doing the same to the bottom wings and his body. We'll go ahead and do and speed up here a little bit. Alright, so right here I'm going to go ahead and do the actual body of the butterfly. So I'm going to use the linear type gradient tool, but I do want to add a couple of additional points in here, and I want to show you how we can kind of use that to indicate light source and these three different shapes we have on the butterfly's body. So what we'll go ahead and do is I'm going to open up my color menu here. I feel like the colors are working okay, so I kind of stick with them. I'm going to add an additional point here in the dark and an additional point here in the lighter area. I'm going to switch them around here. So what we end up with is we end up with a lighter node at the top of the head, gets darker towards his neck. I'm going to need another additional dark node here. brighten some of these browns up just a little bit. And one more light one as well for the very top portion here. So you see how this gradient now goes from light to dark, highlighting the roundness of each section of his body here. We'll then do something a little more straightforward with the color on top there, just leaving it a nice simple orange to brown. One other thing that I did want to go ahead and show you was something that we could try here. If we take the main shape of our wings down here and duplicate this layer, I'm going to make this entire layer this light white to gray. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to take the white gradient node here. I'm going to turn that opacity down to 0. I'm going to take the gray node, I'm going to make it slightly darker. I'm actually going to even probably pull it into the purple a little bit more. So I've got kind of grayish purple. So now this layer is sitting on top of the other gradient layer that we used. So now here we could do a couple of different things. We could come in here and mess around with the layer styles and see what we do, what would happen if we put it on a multiply layer, how it strengthens the colors underneath it, what would happen if we put it on a lighten layer, screen, or even overlay, which get some pretty nice and interesting effects. So once we find one that we like, and we think kind of complements what we've done already underneath, I like this lighter overlay one here. We can also come in and mess around with the opacity of that layer. And we can always turn the layer on and off to see how much it actually affects what we have under it and whether or not we like that overall change. If we do come back up here and put it back on normal, maybe I bring this node down just a little bit here. You see how much it affects the color. So even just leaving it on a normal layer style, and then just messing with the opacity gives us a cool effect and kind of adds to the underlying gradient that we have there. So these are a few different ways that you can actually use gradients and layer gradients in order to get these cool color effects, especially moving from light to dark, and it's certainly a way of adding form and dimension to our images just by using gradients. Alright, I want to show you one last thing with gradients, something cool little trick we could do to add some extra pop to our images here. I'm going to select the ellipse tool here. Holding shift, I'm going to go ahead and create a nice circle. I've set that fill to white. Now I'm going to come over here to our gradient fill tool. I'm going to select Radial. And I'm going to come up here to the color menu. I'm going to take the furthest point here and I'm going to change that opacity to 0. By doing that, you see how it creates this glow effect. So we can move this glow effect, we can put it up here towards the top of the wing and kind of give it some extra shine. We can move it a little closer to his head maybe and give him some shine there. It would look good too if we had a colored background. But using this technique gives you this cool burst of light, and you could use it as little highlight points in different areas of your illustration. It doesn't necessarily apply here on the butterfly, but I thought it was pretty cool and I wanted to share this trick with you. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if this helped you down in the comments below and what some of your favorite ways of using the gradient fill tool are. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more videos coming soon. Until next time.